of sound.
Guys. Guys,
Right.
when should you change your strings? The answer
I'm the one
is
who's
yes.
supposed to swear. You need new strings. Here's when.
Guys, these are antelope that I don't know how to kill. 2 years in a row,
Well-
tag soup. I fill out my hunter survey report and I tell them, no, I was not successful. Here's the units I hunted. Here's how many damn days I spent in the field. But if you want to know a guy who killed one, call MFJJ. How's it feel? How's it feel?
One animal I'm better at hunting than you. One. For like
For the last 2 years in a row.
I'll gladly swap. Like if you want to give me your success and you can have mine, I will trade.
This bow is the lift. I hunted August 26th till September 17th with this bow in the field every day. It was brand new. Gas Ghost strings.
Yeah, we did that just a week before you left, a couple weeks before you left or something, right?
And you're telling me it already doesn't look that good.
Well, no, it's not that it doesn't look that good. It's just things to look for. I'm
All right.
sure you're going to be totally fine, and I wouldn't be alarmed on it. But number one thing you're going to see, and it's not something to be drastically alarmed about. In fact, I usually avoid using wax at all costs because it does change the weight of your string and will make small differences on a long impact. If you're 50 yards and in, doesn't matter at all. If you're never shooting past that, wax your string. It's not going to hurt anything. If you're shooting like 80, 90 yards at some point, you probably don't want to wax your string. However, if it starts to look like this, which this is pilling, and ironically enough, stuff like this is usually from brushing up against your clothes. Like I said, stuff like that isn't like majorly alarming, and if you wax that, it'll go away. But this is from running up against your clothes or brushing against your leg while you're running through the woods. Now, granted, dust, dirt, grime, etc., things like that. If you're in a dry environment, which this September we were dry AF, like really bad almost everywhere you went, that also takes the moisture out of your string, and wax is intended to kind of lubricate your string a little bit, give it a little bit more of that moisture so it doesn't just fuzz apart. But this is from rubbing up against your body. If it gets really bad, it's never really bad until you have like a whole piece that comes off. This is just a little bit of fuzz. It's nothing to be alarmed about. It's nothing to be panicked about. Number one places where you're going to see or need to know to replace your string is when the serving itself starts separating. So number one common spot, turn in here a little bit, is somewhere around in this vicinity is where you really need to watch. And you can actually look at the color change here to here. This part wears, this part really doesn't because it's rubbing on the edges of the module as you draw the bow back. You'll see a separation in here, and you'll see the colors of this gray-black underneath it. That's when you need to be concerned. Because one, guaranteed your timing's out. Because that diameter change makes it roll different in the module and will allow the timing to be slightly different. So at least watch that. Two, if you have access to it or a shop that has it, you could pull the cable off and reserve it with a new serving and retime it and get some more life out of it. But if that's separating, your stuff's starting to stretch. Most modern strings and cables don't stretch very much, if at all, if they're made decently. And traditionally, we'll do that within like the first 500 shots. So if you're getting stretch after that period, that's usually breakdown, not stretch. The fibers underneath are starting to come apart. And once again, in here is where it's seeing the most work. You can't see it breaking, right? You won't see it come across. Same thing down here. They're in the same spots. Next thing to watch for is the cam grooves right here. As they come over, a lot of these cams have to sit at an angle to get at the tune. So when your string comes down, it's actually riding the side of the cam and popping back in. That's part of why these cam grooves are so deep, is because it does ride on the edge of it. And if that cam groove's too shallow, it'll pop off the cam.
Gotcha.
And some of the older models of bows had really narrow grooves through here that weren't tall, and you'd literally derail your bow if you weren't careful. So you'll see a wear point here and here, like near the tips, because that's where it's bending over the hardest when the bow fires. Then the next place you're going to see it is in the center serving. If everything's perfect on your bow, if there's no hard grooves or hard points or hard wear issues, and you just shoot the shit out of it, this is where it's going to come apart. And if you don't keep an eye on this and keep shooting it with a broken center serving, you're actually using the fibers in your knot groove, and you'll bust it right here. So those are the main things to watch for, right? These are the biggest concerns. As these fibers go, you might want to consider pressing your bow if you have the option and try to pull it apart a little bit. See if you get a loose piece. Another real big telltale, once again, for those of you that have presses and want to make sure your shit's still working right, press your bow, take the string off one side, and flex it. Does it feel like a wet noodle? It's broken inside. But the serving's holding it together, so it's over time.
Okay.
Right? So it's like if you ever put on a new good set of strings, it is mind-blowing how stiff the servings are. Like you're trying to flex them. They're hard to bend, right? If it's made right and made good, they're making it under a shit ton of pressure and then serving it under a shit ton of pressure. So as they take the pressure off, it compresses the serving harder. If you get ones that are real stiff, you're probably fine. You get ones that are real limpy loose, you probably have stuff coming apart underneath it. Telltale signs of that if you aren't seeing these things, but it's still coming apart. Standing at your range shooting, you're hitting low, you're hitting lower, you're hitting lower, you're hitting lower. Stop. You have a broken cable, almost guaranteed. Or your loop here is shifting. Once again, broken things. Okay, there are telltale signs of this that makes it relatively easy. If you pull this string back and all of a sudden it feels like you don't have the same back wall, like it's soft, like you can almost pull through it twice as much, you probably have a busted cable because they'll flex more. They're easy things to tell. And if all of a sudden your broadhead and field point don't hit in the same spot, and they did before, there's another indicator. Now, some of these things can also be the bearings going out in your cam, because every cam out there has bearings that things rotate on, and as those balls shift, it actually changes the dynamic length of things.
Right.
So if this comes out internally, mind you, they all have them. Hoyt's got them, Matthew's got them, Bowtech's got bearings. They all have bearings. And bearings are the intention of the rotational things in them that do give. Okay, so just because this happens doesn't necessarily mean that you have a broken string, a broken cable, bad serving, things of that nature. However, if one of them is broken, you should be able to grab your bow by the handle, make a fist, and hit the side of your bow, and you should hear something that kind of sounds like a baby rattle going. A little bit of vibration, a little bit of noise. Or, once again, if your bow is just all of a sudden louder, start looking for things that are loose on your bow, and if you can't find anything on your bow that's loose, it's probably your bearing. Bows start getting really loud. If you have an automatic left to right shift that just happens, it's probably the bearing, because if the bearing shift, your wheel lean changes, which would change a left to right, but not necessarily an up and down. So if you get a left to right that you didn't expect that is duplicated all of a sudden, start looking at your bearings. Once again, you need a press to test those things. And how you would test a bearing is you press it, get all the weight off the cam, unhook everything from the cam, and rotate the cam. Okay. If it moves really smooth, your bearings are fine. If you move it and you feel a little hitch in your giddy up kind of deal, like you feel a little resistance, your bearings are. So, because the balls shifted or a ball fell out or they rotated out of sync, because how bearings work is it's a number of balls touching each other and those balls rotate.
Balls touching each other?
Balls touching each other. So,
can't use
but
that.
Yeah, if you look at it internally, right, it's just a whole bunch of balls sealed between two plates that sit in line, right?
Yeah.
And that's what makes it turn. If those plates come apart, the balls come out of line, and then it shifts.
Yeah.
So that's where you're running into that.
That makes sense.
And those are literally the only wearing things you'll typically ever see. Either your strings and cables need to be replaced, or your bearings go out.
Now that Josh is done podcasting, I have a couple questions for you guys. So, in my experience, I've had the serving separate down here. Mm-hmm. And if I'm being honest, it's my fault. I set the knock sets too tight. Then I couldn't get it to tune because I didn't do the center shot the right way because I make mistakes. So I'm in there with the sharp knife, cutting, trying to be delicate, moving those. So that was my fault. Other than that, I've never had it really separate here. Mm-hmm. But if everything else checks out, you're saying pull those out and reserve it.
Yes.
Okay, number 2. I have seen people who don't really know how, like maybe their cable needs to be shortened. Their timing's out. Mm-hmm. And I've seen the way that they touch the end of that cable and they put it back in. And I'm like, the way you bent that up, there's no wonder it's separated at the end, the serving.
Sure.
And then the last one would be, what do you have to say to the guys? Ooh, we need to check this on video. But what do you have to say to the guys who are the unlucky, or gals who are the unlucky ones? Him, her, they, them. They are the unlucky ones. They buy a set of, let's just say gas, because gas is a really popular brand.
Yep.
What up, Eric Griggs? and they get their new strings and they go and they shoot a few arrows and they like see a little bit of separation at the end of a string or cable. What do you have to tell them? Like, cause
Call them immediately.
okay, call.
Call gas immediately and they'll replace it. Guaranteed. If they get separation, they'll replace it.
Because it will happen to some of you sometime. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at the reality of what you're dealing with. It's a manufactured product. 10,000 of them go out. You might have one that gets screwed up and
Right.
somebody didn't catch it. So if you manage to get that or run into that issue, contact that company. They stand behind their product 1,000%. Now, if you use the piss out of it for 3 years and say my serving separated, well, it's a wearing component. That's like saying I put 50,000 miles on my tires and you should give me new tires. It's like, no,
Understood.
They don't last forever.
So, guys, I was hunting with this in Idaho, and I was noticing. So I'd already been to New Mexico, and I was in Idaho deep. We're in 20 days into the season, and I'm like, that's starting to not look good. You see the little fuzzy fuzz, and I was keeping an eye on it, but I had D-loop, tools, pliers,
ready to go. Well, that's the beauty.
Should I have changed it
No.
in the field?
No, but
Guys,
that's the
check
beauty
this
of
out.
it. That is the beauty of soft knots is you can cut your loop off, put a new loop on, and nothing changed. That's part of why you want an upper and a lower soft knot. It's easy to replace, and the gap would be the same.
Awesome.
Might screw up the length of it a little bit, which will make your peep look a little off, but it won't change the tune. And that's a big deal. But this is most likely from a hard edge on a release.
So guys, did we answer your question? This is when you should change your strings. I personally like to change them pretty much after elk season.
One more common place that I didn't point out on bows that have
the
roller
roller
guards.
guards, yes.
It's underneath the roller guard. And a lot of times you won't see it until you drop back. So in order to check what the serving wear is like here, because they do bend, draw the bow back. And if you see lines coming out and back, a lot of times it can break under there and you won't even see it because when it's at rest, it's hidden. You gotta draw the bow back.
Yep.
Yeah. Little telltale on that one.
Well, we're gonna go interrupt this video. I have my elk meat being delivered right now.
Oh.
Let's go get it. And you guys, order yourself some new strings. If you're gonna get them from Josh, Podium Archer, I can get you a discount. Use discount code ElkShape. Anywhere on the store will take 10% off. Separations in the preparation. Order some new strings. You deliver wild game.
Oh yeah, that's all we do.
you do.
Yeah, we got like 300 meat processors.
And so you're just in Washington today?
Yeah, just Washington. Now I'll hop over into Idaho.
I told your gal that my house is in Idaho to deliver it there if it was easier for you.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I'm going right over there next.
Whoops. Oh well. Oh
$20.
my gosh.
Hey, take two of them.
Let me, yeah, exactly. Here, give me that. Make Dan look like a little bitch. Oh yeah, get some.
Josh got 2 boxes instead of...
Yeah,
What's
one of
up?
them was like a quarter full.
Oh, okay. You made it look like...
A few more, yeah.
Do you want a credit card? Or do you
Yeah,
want...
we do card Venmo. If you want to save the 4% on the card, you can do Venmo.
See how much Venmo loot I have.
Yeah. It's one thing. Anything outdoor related,
So,
it never
I will say, for Wyoming, this is a Utah bowl. That it was, Evansville?
Evanston.
Evanston, what's the name of that company?
F&P Broughton.
Okay.
Broughton meat.
They called me up and they're like, yeah, we got your meat done. $800 and something dollars, please. I'm like, what? Okay, put it on Joe Rogan's tab. Because
Yeah.
that's where he gets his meat.
Yeah.
And they're like, and I'm like, okay, that didn't work. So I pay her. And then the shipping, I was thinking it was gonna be like, I've had meat shipped to me many times, $300 to $400. So I have paid almost $2,000 for this. But I'm happy to do that.
And then you got a mount too, don't you?
Oh,
Yeah.
he does. He
Yeah.
does skull plates and that's
Skull-
it.
all right.
That's hunting just never ends. I mean,
What's the name of your Venmo?